I try to be positive about all of it, but I try to be realistic too. I think the hardest thing for me was not being able to hold her. I finally got to hold her on Mother's Day.
From Haley, who spent months on an ECMO machine, to David Phillip, who lived his entire life inside a plastic bubble. In this video, we're looking at children whose survival depended on machines so extreme they seem impossible. Let's begin with Jackson Benge, a heart warrior's journey. Jackson Benge, a bright-eyed and adventurous youngster, has faced challenges that would daunt even the bravest of souls. Born with a severe heart condition, Jackson's life has been a journey of medical interventions, hospital stays, and unwavering optimism. At the center of his story is the ventricular assist device, VAD, that has become a lifeline, supporting his heart and fueling his spirit. Jackson's journey began with a diagnosis that would alter the course of his life forever. His heart, once strong and healthy, was found to be faltering, unable to pump blood effectively. The news sent shockwaves through his family, who rallied around him with love and support. As Jackson's condition worsened, doctors presented the family with a range of options, including a VAD implantation. The ventricular assist device is a mechanical pump designed to support the heart's function. In Jackson's case, the device was implanted in his chest, connected to a battery pack that he wore in a backpack. The VAD would take over some of the heart's pumping duties, allowing Jackson to live a relatively normal life while awaiting a heart transplant. The surgery was a complex and delicate procedure, but Jackson's medical team was confident in their ability to improve his quality of life. As the device began to function, Jackson's family noticed a significant change in his energy levels and overall well-being. He was able to engage in activities he loved, spend time with friends, and even attend school. Living with a VAD presented Jackson with a unique set of challenges. He had to be mindful of his device at all times, ensuring that the batteries were charged and the pump was functioning correctly. Infection risks were a constant concern, and Jackson had to be vigilant about his surroundings and interactions. Despite these challenges, Jackson remained determined to live life to the fullest. He adapted to his new reality, learning to manage his device and navigate the complexities of his condition. His courage and resilience inspired those around him, from his family and medical team to friends and classmates. As Jackson continues on his journey, he remains hopeful for a heart transplant. The VAD has given him a new lease on life, but he knows that a transplant would bring him even closer to a normal life. Until then, Jackson will continue to live life with courage, humor, and a spirit that inspires us all. While Jackson continues to struggle and fight with a VAD, our next youngster lost his battle after living 12 years in a bubble. David Phillip Vetter, the boy in the bubble. Our next story takes us back to September 21st, 1971, when a child was born who would become one of the most famous patients in medical history. David Phillip Vetter entered this world with severe combined immunodeficiency, or SCID. From the moment of his birth, David's life was unlike any other child's. While most newborns are immediately placed in their mother's arms, David was rushed into a sterile, plastic environment that would become both his sanctuary and his prison. The bubble that became David's home was a marvel of 1970s medical engineering, yet heartbreakingly primitive by today's standards. Every item that entered his world had to be sterilized with extreme care. Food, toys, books, clothing, everything had to undergo rigorous decontamination procedures before it could safely share space with this vulnerable child. Even human contact was filtered through thick plastic barriers and specially designed gloves that allowed his parents to touch him, but never truly hold him in the way every parent dreams of embracing their child. As David grew from infant to toddler to young boy, the psychological implications of his isolation became increasingly apparent. His case would go on to advance treatments for SCID and inspire gene therapy research, but the immediate reality was a child who experienced the world through plastic walls and filtered air systems. He learned to walk, talk, and play within the confines of his sterile environment, developing a personality that was remarkably resilient despite his extraordinary circumstances. The medical team caring for David faced unprecedented challenges. How do you provide normal childhood experiences to a boy who cannot safely exist in the normal world? How do you nurture emotional development when physical contact is mediated by barriers and machinery? As David approached his teenage years, the decision was made to attempt a bone marrow transplant from his sister in 1983. This procedure represented hope, the possibility that David might finally step out of his bubble and experience the world denied to him for over a decade. The transplant initially seemed promising, offering the tantalizing prospect of a normal life for a boy who had never known what normal meant. However, the cruel reality of David's heart's condition soon became apparent. He developed complications from the Epstein-Barr virus, a pathogen that poses minimal threat to those with healthy immune systems but proved catastrophic for David's still compromised defenses. On February 22, 1984, at the age of 12, David Vetter passed away, leaving behind a legacy that would forever change how medical professionals approach the treatment of immune deficiency disorders. While David's 12 years were confined within sterile walls that protected him from an invisible microbial world, our next story spans 7 decades with a very different kind of confinement. Paul Richard Alexander, 7 decades in an iron lung. Born on January 30, 1946, Paul Richard Alexander's life changed forever in 1952 when, at the tender age of 6, he contracted polio, a disease that would strip him of his ability to breathe independently and confine him to one of the most imposing medical devices ever created, the iron lung. The year 1952 was part of the polio epidemic that terrorized families across America and the world. Before the development of effective vaccines, polio struck seemingly at random, leaving some children with minor symptoms while devastating others with permanent paralysis. Paul fell into the latter category, with the virus attacking his nervous system so severely that it left him paralyzed from the neck down and completely dependent on mechanical assistance to perform the most basic function of life, breathing.
I didn't want to die, so I continued to fight.
Earlier this year, January 22nd, 2024, Paul launched his very own TikTok account.
My name is Paul Alexander, and I live in an iron lung because I can't breathe alone.
The iron lung that became Paul's home was a massive, intimidating machine weighing 600 pounds, a steel cylinder that enclosed his body from the neck down, with only his head visible to the outside world. The machine worked by creating negative pressure around his body, causing his lungs to expand and draw in air, then releasing that pressure to allow exhalation. Confined to a machine that most people would find claustrophobic and terrifying, Paul refused to let his physical limitations define the boundaries of his life. He graduated from high school, earned a law degree, and practiced as a lawyer using a mouth stick, achievements that seemed impossible for someone whose entire body below the neck was essentially non-functional. The mouth stick that Paul used became an extension of his will and determination. This simple device allowed him to type, turn pages, and perform the countless small tasks that others take for granted. Through this seemingly primitive tool, Paul was able to engage with the world intellectually and professionally, proving that physical limitations need not constrain mental capabilities or professional aspirations. Paul's legal career was particularly remarkable given his circumstances. Paul adapted to each challenge with characteristic ingenuity and determination, developing techniques for managing case files, conducting legal research, and communicating with clients that worked within the constraints of his iron lung dependency. Paul passed away on March 11, 2024, holding the Guinness World Record for the longest time spent in an iron lung, a record that, thankfully, is unlikely ever to be broken, as advances in medical technology have made such extreme long-term mechanical dependency increasingly rare. Paul's story of complete dependence on his iron lung stands in fascinating contrast to our next tale, that of a woman who shared his reliance on the same technology but found a way to live between two worlds. Martha Ann Lillard, the iron lung survivor, still fighting. Our third story brings us to Martha Ann Lillard, born on June 8, 1948, whose encounter with polio at age 5 in 1953 created a different but equally compelling narrative of survival and adaptation. Unlike Paul Alexander, who required constant iron lung support, Martha's story represents a middle ground between complete mechanical dependency and full recovery. When Martha contracted polio in 1953, the world was still grappling with this devastating disease that struck fear into the hearts of parents everywhere. The epidemic was nearing its peak, with hospitals across the country filling their corridors with iron lungs as medical professionals struggled to save children whose breathing had been compromised by the virus. Martha's case required immediate iron lung intervention, beginning a relationship with mechanical breathing support that continues to this day, more than 70 years later. The polio virus damaged Martha's diaphragm permanently, leaving her with a compromised ability to breathe independently. However, her case differed from Paul Alexander's in crucial ways. While Paul required constant iron lung support, Martha's breathing difficulties were primarily problematic during sleep, when the natural relaxation of respiratory muscles left her unable to maintain adequate oxygen levels without mechanical assistance. This distinction might seem minor, but it created a dramatically different life experience. During her waking hours, Martha could function relatively normally, engaging with the world in ways that were impossible for those confined to iron lungs around the clock. However, every night brought the necessity of returning to her modified iron lung, a small smaller, more manageable version of the massive machines used in hospital settings during the height of the polio epidemic. Martha's modified iron lung represents decades of technological refinement and adaptation. Unlike the imposing hospital machines of the 1950s, her home unit was designed for long-term domestic use, incorporating features that made nightly use more comfortable and psychologically manageable. As Martha aged and the ranks of iron lung users dwindled, she became increasingly rare, one of the last living links to an era of medical intervention that most people know only from history books and museum displays. Now, in her 70s, she is one of the last known iron lung users, making her not just a survivor, but a living historian of polio treatment and recovery. Where Martha's battle with polio was acquired through viral infection, our next story takes us into the realm of genetic destiny, where a child's struggle for survival begins not with exposure to disease, but with the very blueprint of life itself, requiring not one machine, but an entire orchestra of medical devices working in harmony to sustain existence. Noah Widosh, fighting Edwards syndrome against all odds. Noah Widosh was born to Jacqueline Widosh with trisomy 18, also known as Edwards syndrome, a rare chromosomal disorder that medical professionals often describe in the most sobering terms possible. This genetic condition, caused by an extra copy of chromosome 18, creates developmental delays and organ complications so severe that many affected children do not survive their first year of life. Edwards syndrome presents challenges that extend far beyond typical medical complications. The condition affects virtually every system in the body, creating a cascading series of problems that require comprehensive, round-the-clock medical intervention. For Noah, this meant immediate dependence on an array of machines that would become as essential to his survival as his own organs, perhaps more so given the compromised state of his natural biological functions. Noah's breathing requires constant support from a ventilator, a machine that essentially performs the work his lungs cannot accomplish independently. This isn't the temporary ventilator support that some patients require during recovery from surgery or illness. This is permanent, life-sustaining intervention that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with backup systems in place because any interruption could be fatal within minutes. The complexity of Noah's medical needs extends far beyond breathing support. A nebulizer provides essential airway moisture, helping to prevent the respiratory complications that are common in children with Edwards syndrome. This device creates a fine mist of medication and moisture that helps keep his airways clear and functional, a seemingly simple intervention that represents the difference between comfort and respiratory distress. One of the most remarkable aspects of Noah's care routine involves a vibrating vest designed to help clear mucus from his lungs and airways. Children with Edwards syndrome often have difficulty clearing respiratory secretions naturally, leading to dangerous accumulations that can cause pneumonia or respiratory failure. The vibrating vest provides mechanical assistance for this crucial function, literally shaking loose the secretions that Noah's compromised system cannot eliminate on its own. The tracheostomy suction device that Noah requires represents one of the more invasive but absolutely essential aspects of his care. This machine allows his caregivers to remove secretions directly from his airway through a surgically created opening in his throat. The procedure must be performed regularly throughout each day, requiring skilled technique and constant vigilance to prevent complications that could arise from improper suctioning or equipment failure. Noah's nutritional needs require intervention through a gastrostomy tube, a feeding system that delivers nutrients directly to his stomach, bypassing the swallowing difficulties that are common in children with Edwards syndrome. This isn't simply a matter of convenience. Many children with this condition cannot safely swallow food or liquids due to neurological complications, making tube feeding a life-sustaining necessity rather than a temporary medical intervention. Perhaps most importantly, Noah's story represents a powerful counter-narrative to the medical model that sometimes reduces children with severe disabilities to their diagnoses and limitations. His family's advocacy demonstrates that children with Edwards syndrome are not defined solely by their chromosomal abnormality, but are individuals deserving of the same love, care, and opportunity for meaningful life experiences that all children deserve. While Noah's complex genetic condition requires a symphony of machines for ongoing survival, our next story is about a young boy who lost his battle to epilepsy. Caleb Joseph, a VNS story. Caleb Logue was a 2-year-old boy who passed away due to a malignant brain tumor in 2007. His legacy lives on through the Pennies from Heaven Foundation, established by his family to support families with critically ill children. Vagus nerve stimulation, VNS, is a medical treatment that involves implanting a device that delivers electrical impulses to the vagus nerve. This nerve plays a crucial role in regulating various bodily functions, including heart rate, digestion, and mood. The VNS device consists of a small generator implanted under the skin in the chest, typically near the collarbone. The device is connected to the vagus nerve in the neck and delivers electrical impulses to stimulate the nerve. These impulses can help reduce reduce the frequency and severity of seizures in people with epilepsy. VNS has been shown to be effective in reducing seizures in people with epilepsy, particularly those who are not responsive to medication for treating epilepsy. Epilepsy can have a significant impact on families, both emotionally and financially. The stress of caring for a child with a chronic condition can be overwhelming, and many families struggle to balance work, home life, and medical expenses. Organizations like Pennies from Heaven provide vital support to families with critically ill children, offering financial assistance for medical bills, groceries, transportation, and more. These efforts help alleviate some of the stress and burden, allowing parents to focus on their child's recovery. While Caleb Joseph lost his battle, he was able to feel the love and care of his parents for as long as he lived, just like Henley Smart, another warrior who is still fighting for survival. Henley Smart, ECMO, and the fight against congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Our fifth story takes us into the world of neonatal intensive care, where the most advanced medical technology meets the smallest and most vulnerable patients. Henley Smart was born with congenital diaphragmatic hernia, or CDH, a condition that occurs when there's a hole in the diaphragm, the muscle that separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity and plays a crucial role in breathing. This opening allows organs from the abdomen to migrate into the chest cavity, creating a cascade of life-threatening complications that require immediate and extraordinary medical intervention.
I try to be positive about all of it, but I try to be realistic too. I think the hardest thing for me was not being able to hold her. I finally got to hold her on Mother's Day.
For Henley, the severity of her condition required intervention with one of the most sophisticated life support technologies available in modern medicine, ECMO, or extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. This technology essentially replaces the function of both the heart and lungs, removing blood from the body, oxygenating it artificially, and returning it to the circulatory system. It's a technology so complex and resource-intensive that it's available only in the most advanced medical centers, requiring teams of specialists working around the clock to monitor and adjust the system. Henley required ECMO support not once, but twice as a newborn, highlighting the precarious nature of her condition and the extraordinary measures required to keep her alive. The decision to place an infant on ECMO is never made lightly. It's an intervention reserved for the most critical cases, where conventional treatment has failed and death is imminent without mechanical support. The fact that Henley needed this level of support twice demonstrates both the severity of her condition and the remarkable capabilities of modern neonatal intensive care. ECMO technology works by establishing a circuit outside the body where blood can be oxygenated and carbon dioxide removed, essentially performing the work that compromised lungs cannot accomplish. For a newborn, this involves inserting large catheters into major blood vessels, creating an artificial circulation system that must be monitored constantly for complications like bleeding, clotting, or equipment malfunction. The ECMO circuit becomes an external lifeline, as essential as any internal organ, but infinitely more fragile and prone to mechanical failure. Henley's treatment took place at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, one of the premier pediatric medical centers in the world, and a facility renowned for its expertise in treating complex congenital conditions like CDH. The decision to transport critically ill infants to specialized centers like Cincinnati often represents a family's last hope, requiring emergency transfers and separating families during the most stressful period of their lives. During her ECMO support, Henley's body was essentially given time to heal and develop, while the machine performed the functions her organs could not manage independently. This period represents a medical pause, a time when normal physiological processes are supported artificially, while the body's natural healing mechanisms work to address the underlying problems. For infants with CDH, this can mean allowing compressed lungs to expand and develop, reducing pulmonary hypertension, and recovering from the surgical repair of the diaphragmatic defect. Henley's story of surviving congenital defects through ECMO intervention connects powerfully to our final tales. Two more infants, whose very different medical crises led them to the same life-saving technology, demonstrating how ECMO serves as a universal bridge between life and death for the smallest and most vulnerable patients. Drew Thorstensen and Julian, the ECMO miracles. Our final stories bring us to two more infants whose survival depended on the remarkable technology of ECMO, each representing different aspects of how this life-saving intervention can provide hope in seemingly hopeless situations. These cases illuminate both the versatility of ECMO technology and the various medical crises that can necessitate such extreme intervention in the earliest days of life. Drew Thorstensen, as a 2-month-old newborn in 2012, faced life-threatening respiratory distress and bilateral pleural effusions, conditions that created a perfect storm of respiratory failure, requiring immediate intervention at Lurie Children's Hospital's pediatric ICU. Bilateral pleural effusions involve the accumulation of fluid around both lungs, essentially drowning the infant from within and preventing the lungs from expanding properly to provide oxygenation. This condition can develop rapidly and prove fatal within hours, if not treated aggressively. The decision to place Drew on ECMO for 7 days represented a critical intervention that essentially bought time for his medical team to address the underlying problems while maintaining his life artificially. During this period, the ECMO circuit performed the work of both his heart and lungs, allowing his compromised organs to rest and recover, while medical professionals worked to resolve the fluid accumulation and respiratory distress that threatened his survival. Drew's case illustrates the versatility of ECMO technology in treating various forms of cardiopulmonary failure in infants. Unlike some conditions that require ECMO for weeks or months, Drew's 7-day course represents a more typical duration for respiratory support, allowing time for recovery without the extended complications that can arise from prolonged mechanical circulation. His successful weaning from ECMO and subsequent recovery demonstrates the technology's ability to bridge patients through acute crises toward recovery. Julian's story, beginning in 2012, represents another common pathway to ECMO support: severe infection leading to respiratory failure. Born that year, Julian developed severe pneumonia and pulmonary hypertension shortly after birth due to Group B Streptococcus infection, a bacterial pathogen that can be transmitted from mother to infant during delivery and cause devastating illness in newborns whose immune systems are not yet developed enough to fight such infections effectively. Group B Streptococcus represents one of the more serious bacterial infections that can affect newborns, capable of causing sepsis, pneumonia, and meningitis. In Julian's case, the infection triggered severe pneumonia that compromised his lung function so severely that conventional ventilator support was insufficient to maintain adequate oxygenation. The development of pulmonary hypertension, elevated blood pressure in the lungs' blood vessels, created additional complications that made survival unlikely without ECMO intervention. Julian's immediate transfer to intensive care and placement on ECMO demonstrates the rapid decision-making required in neonatal emergencies. Unlike adult patients who might have time for extensive evaluation and gradual escalation of care, critically ill newborns often require immediate intervention with the most advanced life support technologies available. The window for successful intervention can be measured in hours, making rapid access to specialized care literally a matter of life and death. The financial implications of ECMO support for families can be staggering, with daily costs often reaching tens of thousands of dollars and total treatment expenses potentially exceeding hundreds of thousands of dollars. Insurance coverage for such expensive interventions can be complex, and families may find themselves navigating financial challenges while simultaneously coping with the medical crisis affecting their child. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.